I'm Mike Dunn,
I'm Mark Julian.
and this is Tabletop Throwdown. Okay, so we're back. We're back from PAX Unplugged, and we had a pretty fantastic time. I thought it was a great convention. What did you think, Mark?
Yeah, so it's the first PAX that I've been to, of my second convention ever, but I had a blast. Really fun time.
Yeah, PAX Unplugged is considerably different than a lot of the other conventions. Not only because it's a spin-off of the more video game centric PAX conventions that happen East, West, Australia. There used to be one in Texas. They don't have it anymore. So there's a tabletop presence at all of them, but PAX Unplugged is just about board games and TTRPGs and anything that isn't basically just looking at a screen full time. So it's always a blast. I also think there's a considerably different vibe because it's more fan centric. PAX, the Penny Arcade guys started PAX as a fan focused convention because they felt like fans of video games and video game and gaming culture in general weren't being served well by the conventions that were out there. And a lot of people couldn't go to E3 back then either. Not that E3 exists anymore, but you kind of get the idea.
Yeah, so I've only been to Gen Con and now PAX, so comparing the two, Gen Con feels much more like a huge market. Like everyone's there to do business. Not that, there's cool stuff going on, there's presentations. I had a ton of fun at Gen Con, but PAX feels a little more personal. And the vendors are there kind of also having a good time, not just there with their booth to market whatever. You're able to have much more like conversations and feel like more demos were going on, the huge kind of open play area. So everyone's just there playing games, having a good time. It felt much more laid back than the kind of beehive of Gen Con.
Right, right. Yeah, and there were a lot of panels at PAX Unplugged. Not that we had the time to go to any of them, but usually at other conventions, those panels are more industry oriented. The panels at PAX Unplugged are very much this is stuff that regular people that come to play games want to know more about or get involved with, that sort of thing. I also think there was one other thing that really struck me this year about PAX Unplugged, and this is something that I've noticed in years past, but really kind of hit me was that the level of diversity, not only in the people, the attendees, but in the people that were showing off their games, that were running the booths. Just to give you an idea, just an internal metric of ours, we set up several interviews with several designers, and I think only one of them was a white dude. So lots of women, lots of LGBTQ and trans folks. It was very refreshing. I think a lot of the really kind of interesting and more divergent ideas that are kind of we're starting to see in the market, which is happening because of the mainstreaming of tabletop. Um, it has another effect where a lot more diverse creators find their place in this world and decide to make their mark, and it's really cool, really cool. I love to see it.
Yeah, with the thousands of games that come out every year, it's always refreshing to see that there's still tons of new ideas happening.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the diversity within the hobby. So, yeah, great to see and consistently be surprised by these like innovative games that are coming out.
Yep. And yeah, it was. They don't come out with numbers. Unfortunately, the last numbers that we kind of knew about was from a few years ago, where I think it was like 30,000 people in attendance. I would say and just based on their kind of vague assertions online, that this one definitely topped that. I would say it was probably in the neighborhood of 35, 40. It was certainly around as big as Origins was this year.
Yeah, Saturday especially got pretty crowded. A little difficult to move down some of the hallways, but not quite Gen Con levels.
They sold out of Saturday badges and 3-day badges, just to give you an idea. And I don't think they've done that at PAX Unplugged before. So
wow,
that's a new thing, very new thing. But yeah, it was the last convention of the year. All of us in media and on the publisher sides, we were just kind of enjoying. We did a lot of work this year. We were kind of enjoying ourselves at this convention, and it really, really showed. It was just a really fun vibe, and we had some really good food nearby too.
Yeah, the convention center is like catty corner to Chinatown in Philadelphia, which had amazing food. So definitely a plus.
Yeah, I would say I probably had the best dim sum of my life there.
Delicious.
Not that I had much dim sum before that, but I did have one of my top 5 bowls of ramen, and I am a ramen snob. So for it to kind of crack that, it might have even been my third favorite. For it to crack that list is pretty good.
It was as good, if not better, than the cup of noodle that I have for lunch every once in a while.
You don't say such things. That's
not a ramen guy.
Anyway, but you're not here to hear us talk about soup and noodles.
Yeah, let's talk about
Philadelphia.
Let's talk about board games.
Let's talk about board games. So yes, the top 10 games that we saw at PAX Unplugged. Our first game that we saw that we really liked was Ironwood, and this was a game that our rep at Mind Clash on the first day, he saw us kind of wandering around, and I went over to say hi to him. He was like, "Hey, we just announced this new game, and you should come by tomorrow and try it out." And so I unfortunately did not have the free enough schedule, but I did send Mark to it, and Mark and Nick both played Ironwood. Mind Clash is one of my current favorite publishers right now. I'm in the process of reviewing Perseverance, and my Kickstarter copy of Septima arrived right before I left for PAX, and haven't gotten it to the table yet. I'm kind of freaking out about it. But Mark, tell us about Ironwood. You guys had some really positive things to say about it, if I recall.
Yeah, so really happy I got to check it out. If you watched the first episode of the podcast, if you didn't, go back and do that. I mentioned that 2-player games are what my most played type of game. It's what I'm really into. And Mind Clash is a 2-player asymmetric game akin to Rebellion, 2-player asymmetric. It's my favorite game of all time. So in Ironwood, you've got 2 factions. You've got... and I'm going to mess the names up, but the Iron faction and the Wood faction, and they have appropriately themed names that I'm drawing a blank on, but you're fighting in this land that's made up of kind of like mountains with villages on them, and then in between the mountains is forests. So the Wood people can only travel in the forests, and the Iron people only travel in the mountains. So it's super interesting. You'll never actually be in the same area as each other. You'll only ever be adjacent. So kind of similar to another like Root, where the raccoon is in the forest while everybody else is playing in the clearings. The Wood people are in the forest, the Iron people are in the mountains. And you're really playing almost 2 separate games. The Wood faction is trying to create these totems, and they have to create them adjacent to certain cities based on vision cards that they draw, and then extract the totems from the maps. They have to carry them to the edge of the map in order to score them, and they need to score 3 of those to win the game, while the Iron people have to create 3 cities. So it's similar, but it's done in different ways. And the Iron people can create a city anywhere. They don't need to do it in a certain location. But they have to make a foundation and then build it again to convert it into a city, and then they do that 3 times.
That's really
And then,
interesting. I thought it was more of like a tactical skirmish game.
so it has that aspect. So it's you're not in the same area, but you can attack adjacent areas. So if the wood people are in the forest next to one of the cities, and because of the way the map is set up, if they're in one of the central forests, they're going to be adjacent to like 3 cities at any one time. So they're constantly threatening, and they move much faster. So they're kind of more nimble, threatening everywhere, where the iron people are maybe a little bit stronger, a little more combat capability, but they're moving slower. They have this big drill that they're slowly moving around, trying to drill the materials that they need to build the cities. And then the cards. It's one of those games like Rebellion or like Twilight Struggle, where the cards and knowing what's on the cards is really impactful. So being our first game, Nick and I were both, doing our best, but you're surprised by some powerful card ability. They're like, oh, if I'd known that was in the game, I would have done something different. So it's definitely a game that will reward you the more that you play it and the more familiar both people are with the decks of cards that make up each faction.
That's kind of like Land, Air, and Sea. Have you played that game? Yeah,
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one where like the real strategy comes in when everybody knows the card.
Yes. Yeah, so the first time you play, it's going to be really just like, this sounds like a good move, and then, trying to make the best of what you're given. But once you know the cards, you can really get into some deeper strategy and maneuvering and maybe setting up some traps with certain cards. Like, I played the Iron faction, and there was a card that gave me the ability to, like, essentially fortify my locations if they had a person there. So you could maybe leave one person as like a tempting spot for the wood people to attack, but then you play your card that makes your people all fortified and harder to kill. So stuff like that you'll discover the more you play the game. But yeah, very asymmetric, really kind of tight back and forth. It came down to right at the end, Nick did win our demo game, which Nick wins every demo game I play with him.
Yeah.
But it was neck and neck right to the end, which is nice. Neither of us felt like we were just like couldn't win the game the whole time. So really exciting demo. It was a prototype, though it seemed fairly done. They said they were going to do some work just to clear up some readability on the map, but otherwise, I think what you'll see in the footage that we have is largely what the game's going to look like when it releases.
Nice. Now I couldn't remember if he told us if that was going to be crowdfunded or not.
But I believe it's straight to retail, 2024.
Straight to retail. Okay, yeah, that's right. I think that makes sense. And did he say when it was we could expect it? Maybe sometime next year.
I believe it's spring. I don't have the exact date, but I think it was spring 2024, so not too far away. Last thing. The Iron faction, all of their pieces are metal, and then the Wood faction, all of their pieces are wood. So, as a board game nerd, I appreciate the premium components and theme to the faction. So, I love to see that.
That's Mind Clash for you. That's Mind Clash. They know that. That's. Yes. Yeah. No. I'm very jealous. I wish I could have gone to play that. I can't wait to see it again next year. Our number 2 game, or rather, our second game.
Our second game.
Yes, I want to make this a countdown, and I just it doesn't make any sense. It's not a countdown. I'm just not very smart. Anyway, Luthier by Paverson Games. This is a game that we got our first look at Gen Con this year. I know I mentioned it on our last podcast, but a huge fan of Distilled. Luthier looks to take that same level of thematic fusion with mechanics that Distilled did, but actually in a significantly heavier, crunchier game. It is it is a worker placement game on one level, where you send your basically you're representing a family. You send your your people out via like discs. The discs have numbers on them. Um, Honestly, the thing that really comes to mind is something like oh gosh, what's that game?
Francis Drake.
No, no. Oh my god, I'm blanking on it.
Godspeed also has the discs.
No,
with
it's
the
much
numbers on
simpler.
them.
Much simpler. Furnace.
Furnace? Yeah.
Yes, Furnace with the number discs.
Yes.
Yes. Basically, the number is definitely counts. When everybody has placed their workers, then the number combined with the amount of assistance, which are one-time use tokens that can increase your number so that you can take that action before someone else, because the numbers do determine who takes that action first. So you're gathering resources, you're bringing them back to your workbench. You're basically getting, I guess, the equivalent of like a recipe for an instrument from one market on the board, and then you're going to put that on your workbench on the left, where these are the instruments that you're looking to build. You move them to your right when you build them, because you can also assign your workers to your own board, because there are actions on the board, such as building an instrument. You're going to be using resources like wood and metal, and they're right now they're calling it animal. Basically, the idea is like animal products like catgut or ivory, that sort of thing, that go into the making of musical instruments, depending on the instrument. And then you're also placing workers on areas to like get your people into like the orchestra, so that you can reserve chairs in the orchestra, which give you more benefits. You're also trying to get patrons that will like basically a lot of the game revolves around these patrons and keeping them happy and making sure they're not too happy so that they go away, because you
gotta keep them wanting more.
Right, you got to keep them wanting more. So, like, there's a track on each patron on your card. You can have up to 3 patrons. There's a track underneath each one that determines how far along and which awards they give you at the beginning of each turn, to help you out. But you can also move that tracking cube back towards the beginning so that you can hang on to that patron longer. There's a lot of moving parts to this game. We were basically handheld for the first round because it is such a kind of complex. There's a lot of complex moving parts to it, much more than Distilled. But it looked great. There was more artwork in place than last time. The board takes up a huge amount of the table. It's got a great table presence, and just the general kind of feel that Distilled had, but with this theme instead, it was there. It was very satisfying.
It sounds like it has a nice efficiency puzzle, which is what you want to see in a worker placement game. Yes,
absolutely, and there are like moments where you're going to play. Oh, and but what you want to do is you want to play a certain kind of music with certain kind of instruments for your patrons, which then enable you to get more goodies. It's there's a lot there, a lot to puzzle out. And if you're one of those people that like Distilled but thought it was a little too lightweight for you, this should scratch that itch.
Nice.
Next on the list,
Number 3.
No, stop. Uh, Stardriven Gateway by Rock Manor Games. I caught a glimpse of this, but I don't remember too much about it. I know one thing I can definitely tell you is that it is a space themed game.
It's a space game, yeah. So I got to demo this, just 2 players, and we played through kind of an abbreviated game, so we shortened it a little bit, but enough rounds that I got a good feel for it. So when you look at it on the table, it's got a big space map made up of tiles, it's got ships on it, and you're going to look at it and say, this looks like Twilight Imperium, or it looks like insert other 4X space game, but it's really not. And I think that makes it better. So
yeah, it had an interesting take on it, from what I recall.
yeah. So it's not really what it looks like. It's really all about the crew of your ship. So the designer mentioned that he really loves Star Trek, and he wanted to make a game that focused on the crew, not so much on the exploration, but on the crew. So the game, while you are moving a ship around a map, trying to complete missions, the game is all about managing your crew on your ship. So you have 6 different slots for your crews. You have your captain, you have your gunner, you have your engineer, you have your crew quarters, navigation, and you'll be slotting crew members into those slots. And then the crew members all have special abilities that you can exhaust them to use their ability. And then every station on your ship is used for specific actions. So you can use navigation to essentially use faster than light travel to jump huge distances across the map based on the number of the die that you assign to that action. Or you could assign a certain number die to your command section in order to refresh your other crew members. Or you can assign dice to your where your weapons are in order to increase your shields or your weapons. So at the beginning of the round, you roll this pool of colored dice, and then those dice are what you use to assign to each section, and they're color coordinated. But every section also has a gray slot where you could use any color die, so you don't get stuck. But as you use the second possible action and then the gray colored action, it costs more energy, and then you have to manage the energy of your ship. And then it's all about just traveling around, trying to complete these mission cards that come up. And when you complete missions, you gain influence on the closest homeworld planet. And then at the end of the game, you're going to score points based on everybody's influence on the planet. So it's a little bit of like area control with where you score objectives, and then managing your crew on the ship. So really cool take on space focused on the crew rather than 4X, which is what everyone seems to focus on. In our playthrough, he said if there's any 4X at all, it's like little X's. So there's some of that exploration where you're flipping over tiles. Yeah, lowercase X's, but much more focus on that kind of card management, ship management aspect, which was really fun. I really enjoyed the demo. I think we played probably 4 or 5 rounds. It was a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. It's going to be on Kickstarter next year.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Next on the list is Molly House by Whirligig Games. Now, this is a game that we mentioned in the previous episode. I was really keen on giving this one a shot. I'm a huge fan of Whirligig Games, and a lot of people out there probably have seen the amazing Shut Up, Sit Down video about John Company, their previous game. It's actually a second edition of John Company. Yes, I did manage to get my hands on a copy of it, and I can't wait to get that to the table. But Molly House is well, as the Worley brothers put it, John Company and Pax Pamir, their previous two games were uh, more about imperialism and institutional history. Molly House is more about social history, and um, it's it's about London in the late 17th century. There is a kind of like an underground group that had this place in London called the Molly House, and it was a group of gender-defying, uh, um, trans and LGBTQT people, uh, all the way back then, that had to kind of uh, stave off the moralistic constables who were trying to squash them, just trying to squash the Molly House, and the people who were just trying to be themselves back in the late 17th century in London. Um, I think probably the first detail that really stood out to me when we got to play the game, a demo of the prototype of the game that they brought, was that the point of the game, yes, it is like, you're getting points, and whoever has the most points wins. But in this game, the points are called joy. Your goal is to spread joy, um, and it's a much lighter game than John Company and Pax Pamir. It's There's a little bit of kind of a poker mechanic where you're kind of trying to make sets or runs cooperatively to throw a party in the Molly House. And uh, most of the gameplay is centered around this deck of cards that you're trying to collect and turn in, and basically each time you play a card, whether it's in the Molly House or through some of the other means that you have, it has like a good aspect to it and a bad aspect to it. Like, higher cards do mean you have a better, a more successful party, and you gain reputation, but that reputation can backfire on you and draw the constables to you quicker. Like when you when you combine your cards for the party, and you're basically you're at the end of that action, you're supposed to draw a card from the deck, and and basically whichever card is higher is the louder, uh the loudest part. So like if your total was like 6 for the party, and a 9 was drawn, that means outside of the party was louder than the party itself, so it didn't attract any unwanted attention. But if it was flipped,
So
then
it's a stealth game.
yeah, well, there's a little bit of stealth to it, but it was really super interesting. Just the artwork, just the visual style of it was gorgeous. And I'm probably butchering like some of the aspects to it, and I hope the Whirlies and the designer can forgive me for that. But I think the bottom line for me is that I feel like this is I was pleased that it was fun to play at the session that I had, because I feel that it's an important game. But I feel like all of the Whirligig games are important games that really kind of seek to educate the player about something historical that wasn't a war, right? you know,
Yeah.
and sometimes to make you feel a little uncomfortable. Um, I think I think by putting players into the shoes of possibly fashionable shoes, I would hope, of the people that used to live in this time period that were part of this movement. Um, I actually I think it will be nicer than, like, say, for instance, in John Company, where you're put in the shoes of a family that is trying to use the East India Trading Company to loot and pillage an entire country of its culture, right?
Yeah, not so
That
nice.
takes you out of your comfort zone. This might take some people out of their comfort zone, but I think in a positive way, because it just goes back to that first thing that I heard, was that your goal is to spread joy, and um, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize about these communities. That's all they're really interested in doing, is having fun and spreading fun and spreading joy. And
It
I think it's
sounds
pretty cool.
like the winner should be whoever has the least number of points. They spread joy to the other players.
Well, I think it's more of like a general kind of like a blanket amount of joy, like to the outsiders, to the other peoples. So so yeah, yeah, like it says, like, you're right. There is kind of a stealthiness. There is like a kind of a hidden role aspect to it. Uh, and there is like a kind of a nasty gotcha component that we didn't play with, where like one person may be playing an informant, right? Which definitely takes things to a little a more of
Yeah,
an interesting place,
nobody
in
wants to be
possibly an
that player
uncomfortable
though.
place. Right? Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you get
Um,
your role and you go, ugh, then everyone goes, it's you.
yeah. But yeah, I can't wait to give this game another shot. And I can't wait to get the coverage of this game up on the site. I think it's really cool, and I think a lot of people are going to like it.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't get to play it. I just kind of walked up at the end. But love the artwork. I love that kind of almost like pen drawn and then like watercolor kind of thing they have going on. So I think the final production is going to be beautiful.
Agreed. Agreed. And I'm going to try to get an interview with the designer soon. Definitely talk to her about it while we were there. So it was a designer, Joe Kelly, um, and Cole Worley is co-designing it. Basically, kind of helping, with his expertise. But yeah, this is a first-time designer in it, and it looks pretty impressive so far.
Very cool. All right. Next game on the list is a new title and kind of a new series coming from Cosmos next year. And the first game in the series is called Vendetta. So you may be familiar with the Unlock games or all the other various escape room type games. There's several publishers
Exit the
doing
game,
those.
I think, is their other line.
Exit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Vendetta is kind of a new approach, and the way they described it is more along the lines of to hunt a killer type game. More of a mystery you got to solve, put clues together. So it's not an escape room. You're not burning holes in the paper and tearing things and gluing things together like in some of their other escape room games. So it doesn't get destroyed. So you could pass it on to somebody else, because once you play it, you know the answer, but it doesn't get destroyed, so you can re-gift it. Anyway, what is the game? Vendetta. The first one it has like a mobster theme. There's been a murder, and I think you're playing as mobsters. You're not playing as like the police. You're playing as mobsters, trying to figure out what happens. But really cool use of like outside of the game elements as part of the game. So there's characters and cards and envelopes you're going to be opening. One of the clues is like a pizza menu, and it looks like a actual like restaurant menu you would get from like takeout or something. There's clues that incorporate like Google Maps, where you're gonna like go on Google Maps to find an address and then like look at the real world Google Maps like image, and that's gonna tie into the game. There's like websites you're gonna go to, so maybe like the pizza restaurant's website, or it sounded really I don't know, innovative in its use of like incorporating real world things into the game. I think there's going to be 3 games in this kind of series of games, with Vendetta being the first one, coming out spring of 2024.
So what's our next game? Twinkle Twinkle by Levity Games. Yes, we did talk about this one. And by the way, you may be noticing that there's some games we mentioned last time that we aren't mentioning right now. And there's a good reason for that. It's because we didn't get a chance to look at some of those games. Like, I would say top of that list would be Chronicle of Kings by Pendlehaven Games. We really wanted to catch that one, but we're just gonna have to take a look at it, hopefully at Origins or maybe even Gamma next year. But we did see Twinkle Twinkle, the new game by Ammon Anderson, who, if you don't know that name yet, you will know that name next year, I assure you. He is the designer of Gnome Hollow, which is going to be a big feature at the OP booth at Gen Con next year. I have it on good authority. And Twinkle Twinkle was actually part of the PAX Rising feature at PAX Unplugged. And it's a lovely little tile laying game about constellations and planets and asteroids and all that stuff. Basically, each player gets like a small board with a star field and a grid on it, and each player draws 4 tiles from the bag. These lovely little clear tiles that have etched in like constellations and planets and black holes and such, so that you can see the beautiful star field behind it. And you're basically drafting tiles. You're drawing 4, passing it on to the next player. They take 1, they pass the rest on to the next player, so on and so forth. And gameplay continues that way until everybody has filled their boards, and I believe it's like 3 turns. It's very fun.
It's 5 turns.
5 turns. Yeah. The idea is that it comes with enough tiles and boards for 4 players to play, up to 4 players. But the idea is that you can keep on adding more boxes to play. He doesn't really have a ceiling. It could be, dozens of players. Apparently, I think that would be logistically a little hard to work with past, I don't know, 8 or 12 players. But conceivably it could be done. It's really nice, and he actually we're actually going to have more coverage of it on the site pretty soon, because he let us take one of his prototypes with us for a preview article. So I expect that soon. But we will have coverage up from PAX Unplugged on the site. And again, this is a designer to watch. It's super fun, and I've already gotten it to the table twice since I've gotten back, and everybody loves it so far. So.
Nice. Yeah, I was surprised by this one. So it was on the PAX Rising, and on the website they just had the box cover, I guess, Twinkle Twinkle, and we didn't really know what the game was about beyond tile laying and stars. So I was picturing more of like Carcassonne and building out kind of a big shared thing, rather than the individual player board. So yeah, just cool to see. And then I think
It's just
he
visually just
actually
very
made,
striking on the table.
yeah, and he like made the starfield that's the background himself, like in his kitchen.
Yep.
Um, so just super cool.
Yeah, just swirling different colors of ink and gouache together, I believe is what he was saying. He showed me some of the original artwork. He had it, and he had it with him. It's very cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
but
awesome.
yeah, great, really fun filler game. I'm looking forward to playing it again. All right. So next up is a game that we both played, though you did step in about 3/4 of the way through the demo, and you've never played the original. So,
Yeah,
uh,
threw me
and that is
threw me in.
Thunder Road Vendetta, another Vendetta title game. But this time, this is the new expansion, Carnival of Chaos. Um, yeah, so Suzanne from Restoration Games reached out to us like literally the day before the convention and said, "Hey, we got a new thing. You want to go check it out?" And of course, Thunder Road Vendetta, the Chrome edition that I kickstarted, has been one of my favorite games this year. Just because it's big, dumb, stupid fun, and this one really kind of takes that big, dumb, stupid fun and ups it to 11 or 22. I think it was already up at 11, but 22. Yeah, it's basically a Thunderdome. Each player has a there's three roads, that normal roads that come in, and then it goes into a circle, and then you're driving around this circle. You're trying to pick up a one of the super weapons that's in the middle of the dome, and then there's also like hazards that um, change and potentially destroy you. Um, like these huge pylons that come up, that move up and move down, and might launch you into another pylon and destroy your car, that sort of thing. And then there's also they called them party favors that you can pick up, and they're like little one-time um, ways to kind of goose some of your actions into more interesting and more viscerally satisfying moments. Um, and it's great. I had a blast. Mark, I know this is the first time you played any Thunder Road, but it looked like you were having some fun.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. So like you said, it's pure chaos, but it's
Yeah,
it's just silly fun. Uh, yeah, you're not getting victory points around a track or racing to a
yeah.
finish line. You're just trying to blow up everybody.
Everybody,
Um,
everybody. Yeah.
it kind of
Um,
reminded me. You ever play Mario Kart, but the battle mode with the balloons? You're trying to pop the
oh
balloons.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. You all get thrown in, and you're just trying to destroy each other. You're not racing anymore at that point. You're just trying to kill everybody.
Yeah, I think the first thing I said whenever we started playing was, "Oh, you made it even more Car Wars without the overhead." Right? Because Car Wars,
Yeah, and I mean,
admittedly,
so
a great game is, but it's very, very much like you're it's you're measuring distance and you're trying to, like,
it's
this
more
game
it's
is
more of a
just,
war game.
yeah, this is like, no, you're rolling dice. Bad things happen to you, to your opponents, to everybody. It's just chaos, and it's glorious. If you're the kind of person that gets upset that when something bad happens to them, you might want to avoid Thunder Road Vendetta, because bad things happen to everybody in this game. It's so
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, you're gonna get blown up. And like you said, so I came in 3/4 of the way through the demo, and then I was up and playing in 30 seconds. I mean,
Yeah.
it's super easy to get into, to teach, and then just have fun.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, look for more coverage from us on that one too. Um, So there was one game that kind of surprised me a little bit, and that's the next game on our list, Buttons and Bugs by Cephalofair. Um, when they announced this during the crowdfunding, I think it was on GameFound earlier this year. It's either GameFound or BackerKit. I know it wasn't Kickstarter. Um, I didn't quite know what to think of it. It seemed like just something, and they basically were like, everybody's getting a copy of this game that's backing this, and then it's also going to be made available for sale. What they did is they took one of the biggest box games in the industry, Gloomhaven, and turned it into one of the smallest box games in the industry, Buttons and Bugs.
Teeny tiny.
Yes, so it's a solo version of Gloomhaven. It's actually based off of a card game that a Gloomhaven fan worked up called Gloomholden. And it features a solo original campaign story by Isaac Childress, which is set after the events of Gloomhaven and Forgotten Circles. It's actually within the continuity of the lore that your characters get shrunk down to teeny tiny size, teeny tiny. And in this teeny tiny $20 box of games, there are, I believe, eight different characters that you can play, and each one has a teeny tiny miniature. Um, it's pretty awesome. The miniature, just if you're wondering what the scale of the miniature is, if you can't see the images, um, one of the cards, like a normal size playing card, is the actual size of the map for each scenario. So you're putting your little tiny mini on a little tiny hex on that little tiny card. Now, this begs the question: will I need a magnifying glass to play this game? Yeah, right. Will I need a magnifying glass to play this game? Possibly, but just the concept and the fact that it's part of the story, and like you're shrunk down and you're fighting like rats and like domesticated animals in Gloomhaven. It's awesome. It's way more awesome than I anticipated, and it's definitely one of the biggest surprises for me. So now I'm really looking forward to it. It's like a huge amount of game in a very small box. I think there's several scenarios you can play, different characters. It's a solo game, and it's only $20. And I believe it's going to come out retail sometime by Q1 or Q2. I think it's probably Q2 or Q3 actually. But
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to pick up a copy of that. I really appreciate too that they shrunk the Gloomhaven box down, but kept the proportions. So if you picture like the big Gloomhaven box, it's tiny, but it's the same like scale.
Yeah,
like the shape of the box and everything's the same. Yeah, it's literally like they just shrunk it.
It looks like a small Gloomhaven box. It's hilarious.
Yeah, they hit it with the shrink ray. Yeah, exactly. I want to see somebody's Calyx with Gloomhaven in one cube, Frosthaven in another cube, and then Buttons and Bugs in its own cube, like right between the two.
I don't know if Frosthaven actually even fits in a cube, does it? Like it's
probably
bigger
doesn't.
Than
yeah.
Gloomhaven. It's insane. Anyway, yeah. So let's see. We have two more games to talk about. The next one. Well, here, why don't you talk about Sunjutsu, Mark?
Sunjutsu. Yeah, so Sunjutsu is from Lucky Duck Games, and I had never heard about this. Actually, that's not true. I think I saw it on Kickstarter probably almost 2 years ago at this point. Didn't back it at the time, but I was just walking the floor at PAX. This wasn't scheduled for us to check out Sunjutsu or anything, and I saw just the kind of the back of their booth and the artwork for the game, and I was, hey, I'm going to check that out later. Didn't get back to it until Sunday, and was able to kind of watch some people play and then get a demo myself. And it plays 1 to 4 players. Though I think the main kind of game is head-to-head 2-player, but you could play. There's a solo campaign, or you could play with 4 in teams,
Kind of
or
like
kind of free for all.
Unmatched, where you can play 4-player Unmatched, but it's better to play 2.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
And it's just a samurai battle game. So it's got a little map with a hex grid, and then you have really detailed samurai miniatures that have like an arrow to show they're like forward facing, because where facing matters. And then gameplay is each player is going to simultaneously pick a card. So kind of like a battle in Unmatched. And then you reveal the cards, and then they have an initiative value. So whoever has the higher initiative goes first. And it could be a move, it could be a rotate, it could be an attack, a shove, all kinds of stuff. And you're trying to strike the other person. I believe it's first to 5 wins the battle. You kill your opponent. So it's a really tactical battle game where you're trying to outmaneuver your opponent and hit them so they don't hit you. And you can adjust the like stance that your character's in to unlock different abilities on your cards. You can try and time blocks into counterattacks. Nice. I was just really impressed with it. The table presence is amazing. The miniatures are super detailed. They've got also some 3D terrain elements to go onto the board, so it just looks gorgeous on the table. And the gameplay is just so quick and fun. You know, pick a card, reveal, see what happens. Pick a card, reveal, see what happens. Try and kill the other person. So does each player have their own deck? Bunch of characters.
That corresponds
yeah, so
with
the decks
character?
They do. The decks are custom to each character. It comes with some pre-built decks or some pre-built deck lists, but then you can also build your own deck if you want to do that. The characters all have like I think 3 or 4 different weapons based on their type of character that they're allowed to have. So you have 2 core cards. One is for your character. So if you're playing the Ronin, you have the Ronin character card, which is going to have a core ability, and then you have a core card for your weapon. And you can equip different weapons at the start of the game. And then from there, that's going to affect the cards that you can put into your deck.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a deeper dive into like the skirmish, the skirmish type of game, but with the level of customization that I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, so you have almost like the deck building aspect of like a TCG almost,
right?
Where you can build this deck ahead of time, and then you have a skirmish game, but zoomed in on just that 1v1 battle. So we're not battling a squad against a squad. It's just me versus you, or we might be a team of 2 versus 2, or a free for all would be chaos, but you could do it. And then that real focus on tactical planning and understanding. Okay, my opponent, that guy has a spear, so he's going to be trying to hit me at range, so I'm going to get in close and try and get him that way. Or you're playing a ninja stealth type character that wants to kind of stay away and throw knives, so I'm going to close the distance. Or you have daggers, and I have a big kind of two-handed sword, so I'm going to keep my distance and slash at you, that kind of stuff. So really enjoyed the demo so much that I bought a copy for myself on the spot. So
nice.
Great game.
Very nice.
And that's Lucky Duck. It was a Kickstarter, but you can get it on their website if you're interested.
Yeah, I imagine Lucky Duck picked up the publishing rights after the Kickstarter happened. I know they did that with Cosmoctopus and a few others over the years. Flamecraft, that sort of thing. No, that's cool. That actually that fills a niche in their lineup that they didn't have before. It's very cool. Okay, well, our last game that we're going to talk about was also it just came out of nowhere. So we saw this game. It's called Time Division, and it's by Heidel. I think it's Heidelbar. It's either Heidelbar or Heidelbear. I don't know. My German's rusty. I don't know. I don't know the umlaut too well, but it's they're a partner with Czech Games, CGE, and they're actually distributing the game for them here in the US. And it's you'd probably like this. It's a 2-player game, Mark. it's a time travel duel. So it's one of the things I liked about it is that it's kind of like it kind of reminded me of like a lot of the kind of deck builders where you're playing, like for instance the Star Wars deck building game, right? You know, you're drawing from um, a deck specific to your side, but it's a little more like you're all drawing from the same deck, but instead of just um, it's very tight. Like you're drawing exactly each of you are drawing the same amount of cards, and then in between you're also putting cards into a common pool, right? So um, your yeah, each game begins with a drafting phase in which the decks of the two people are formed. So while you're forming your deck from the deck that you're using for that particular session, you're also forming a deck that both of you can play from that is in the middle. Um, but those are all of the cards. Like you're not there's it's a very tight amount of cards. And there's actually 3 different decks that you choose from before you play the game. And each represents like a different time period. Um, so you're basically you're playing cards against each other, but then there's also abilities like if you flip the card over upside down, there's an ability that you can use in certain circumstances, like as a defensive maneuver or as part of the card that someone else plays against you. Um, I don't know. It looked really interesting. Had a really kind of unique take, and just a nice like kind of like you build this kind of cardboard tableau that you're both working from. That has just a beautiful table presence. And there's one deck that is all 80s. So it's like kind of got that 80s style, with like the 80s colors and that sort of thing. So it was pretty cool. We'll be getting a review of that up before you know it. But I thought it was a fun little variation that I hadn't seen before. Um, and again,
Yeah, it
I
sounds
probably should have
cool.
sent it playing with you, Mark.
It's all right. I'll check out the review.
Right, right.
It seemed PAX was kind of big for 2-player games this year. There was a lot of 2-player games.
So I think what we're seeing is we're still seeing the effects of all of the design work that probably happened during the pandemic. When like the last few years, we've been seeing a lot more solo games, which was a category that I think barely even existed before the pandemic. Um, and a lot more 2-player games. I think if these aren't designs that came out of the pandemic, they're like second generation designs that kind of sprung forth from that and the renewed interest and kind of just general attitude towards solo and 2-player games, kind of pulling a U-turn from where it was before the pandemic. That's my thought. At least.
Oh, I'm all here for it. I love playing in a big group, but 2-player games are much easier to get to the table. So love to find a good 2-player game.
Yep. So yeah, that's our top 10 games that we saw at PAX Unplugged in no particular order. There, you're pretty much going to see a lot of this as coverage in the coming weeks. We're going to keep on. We've got a lot of interviews. We've got a lot of previews. We've got a great indie TTRPG kind of overview of the convention that's coming hopefully this week or next week. And also look at the Unpub section at PAX U. And yeah, so make sure you hit gamingtrend.com. As for this podcast, as I said in the previous episodes, as I said in the previous episode, we're kind of treating this as like a pilot, and we're going to officially launch the season. We were thinking we were going to do it the second week of January, but I think we're going to go ahead and just kind of put a flag down right now on, I believe it was the 17th. Yes. So expect the first real official episode of Tabletop Throwdown on the 17th. We'll make sure everybody knows about it in advance. It'll be our first official season, and you'll get to see a lot of the ideas that we have planned in terms of format. This is more of like kind of an anything goes format for these two episodes, because we really just wanted to make it about PAX Unplugged. But we got a lot of great ideas. Like, for instance, one that Mark just thought of today, which was what's with all the mushroom games, right?
What is
we may dedicate an episode to mushroom themed games because there seems to be an awful lot of them. So make sure you come back in the third week of January to find out what we have to say about that, if that's what we choose to make that episode about. But yes, so it'll be fun. Definitely check it out, and keep an eye on our PAX U Unplugged or PAX Unplugged coverage on the site and on the YouTube channel. I actually have now set up the audio version of this podcast on most places where you find podcasts. You'll probably see Dan Hinken, our other lead editor, show up for some of those episodes. Mark and I thought that since we actually went to PAX Unplugged, we'd leave Dan out of this one. But
we could have him try and talk about games, but
yeah,
a little bit harder.
It didn't seem fair to him. But yeah, we'll bring Dan back. Don't worry. For
Dan,
all you
sit
Dan
quietly
fans
and
out
listen
there.
to Mike and I talk about games.
the whole thing is just him just like reacting to what we're saying. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, right. The Home Alone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next year.
See you next time.